Welcome to the Coffee Show. First podcast we're recording at the World of Coffee, Jakarta. We're on a trip here. We're here for 3 days. We've got many podcasts planned for you over the next 3 days. First guest, I saw him at a coffee shop yesterday and I heckled him. I made him come on the podcast. Gabriel Agrelli of Daterra Coffee Farms in Brazil. Welcome to the Coffee Show.
Thank you for having me.
So what are your plans here in Jakarta? I see you on Instagram. You're traveling all the time. We first met in Brazil, actually.
Yeah, that's true.
I think it was about 7 years ago.
Yeah.
What is your job working for Daterra Coffee Farms?
Okay, so I'm product director and responsible for market development as well. So pretty much what I do is on the farm side, on the quality side, trying to develop experimental coffees, micro lots, coffees that will challenge the perceived idea of what Brazil can produce and deliver. And as market development, trying to connect that to the potential that we see in the market, trying to connect our farm potential to what trends we are seeing outside around the globe, so we can challenge our lands to produce coffee that is better.
So to enlighten the listener on what Daterra Coffee Farms is, so it's a massive coffee farm in Cerrado in Brazil.
Yeah.
So what state of Brazil is Cerrado in?
Yeah, so we are in Minas Gerais. Cerrado is actually an ecosystem in Brazil, and within that ecosystem there is the coffee growing area. So and that overlaps with the state of Minas Gerais, which is the biggest producing state of Brazil. And there are lots of coffee farms that are quite big in Brazil. We are one of them. Although most of the coffee farms in Brazil, they are kind of small. 80% of them are smallholders, but we are on the 20% that are on the big farm scale. But trying to produce coffee in a way that a small farmer would do, but with the professionalism and science-driven philosophy of a big farm.
Well, this is one of the things that this is why I really wanted to have you on the show, because to ask some of these questions about how Daterra operates. And I guess to paint a picture for the listener is that Brazil produces, 35 to 40% of the world's coffee in total. And a lot of the farms that you speak of, they're industrialized in a way that, you know, the scale is so big.
Yeah.
So one coffee farm in Brazil can outgrow some regions of coffee. So like, I think, but there was a statistic I noticed once upon a time where I think one farm in Brazil can outproduce all of Bolivia, like just because, you know, the production's that big.
Yeah, it's true. It's big.
So how much coffee does Daterra produce each year?
So we produce around 85,000 bags of coffee a year.
Oh, wow.
So it is quite one bag is 60 kilos. So it is a lot of coffee. But I think that what maybe makes people wonder why Daterra is able to produce quality being so big is because, first of all, we don't come from coffee. So we come from other industries in Brazil, and we found coffee over 30 years ago because we wanted to develop a business in Brazil that would balance out the equation between taking care of the environment while we were doing a business. And that's when we thought about agriculture. We found coffee by accident, and we saw that coffee would be the best way to do that. But coffee is a commodity, and being a commodity is very fragile. Prices go up, prices go down. So we were like 30 years ago thinking, okay, if we want to differentiate the product so that while we were doing sustainability, and the word sustainability didn't exist at the time, is heard in the industry, we need to have quality. We need to detach from the C market, from the commodities market. So that's how we were born. From the beginning was really like, okay, let's do quality because that's how we're going to get heard by the industry. And that's how we can make it profitable to invest in nature. It was a little bit of a different concept in the beginning.
Well, this is one of the things that I think makes your farm interesting is that there's kind of tiers of coffee that you have. So starting from, let's go from the top. So Daterra Masterpieces.
Yeah.
So you're talking, 88 points and above sort of thing. Yeah. Really, really incredible lots of coffee. We'll unpack that in a moment. And then what's the next one? Collections, I think?
Collection Daterra, yes.
So collections, and then the more commercial stuff is the
Daterra Classics.
Classics, right.
Yes.
So obviously you're producing at scale, incredible amounts of coffee. But one thing that I think gets lost on some people that are perhaps new to the industry or probably don't open their eyes enough is that Brazil can produce coffee of the quality that's every bit as good as a Panama Geisha or some of the Colombian stuff or Ethiopian that we see today. And I think the masterpieces that you do really highlight that. And I was lucky enough to serve some in my shop not too long ago, Project Zero Coffee. How do you do it? Because Brazil, it's not like you've got this incredibly high altitudes that that Colombia or Panama have. And it's not like you have the shade cover on all your trees. That's really important for producing specialty coffee in a lot of places as well. So how do you do it?
Yeah. So what I think is like, because Brazil is so big and produces so much coffee, we come across the coffees that are more standard or commercial more often than the coffees that are amazing. So that makes us automatically think that that's what Brazil produces. But we do have the amazing coffees as well. It's just harder to find them because they are just kind of lost in this huge sea of coffee that is standard. But if you think about it, any coffee farms around the world, they're going to have a little bit of commercial. It's impossible to do only perfect cherries, only perfect beans. Even in amazing coffee regions around the world with amazing altitude and varietals, like Panama, for example. I just came back from Panama a few weeks ago. You are going to have a little bit of the coffees that they're going to say, okay, this is not as great as the other one. It's still very valued and expensive because they have amazing natural conditions, but it's not all the 90 plus geishas that are going to be on the stage here today, you know? So you have a little bit of that as well. But then the production there is already small. So when you think about Panama, you taste these amazing coffees very often, and automatically we connect that to Panama more commonly than to Brazil. So I think that's it, for example. But thinking about our production, the 3 tiers and the way we do it, we're gonna have varietals that are gonna be meant for more for bigger production because we need to make the business viable. And by making the business viable, we are able to invest in the things that matter to us, which is taking care of the community, the environment, and all. So a huge amount of the money that we make goes back to the community. It goes back to the nature, to all the tree planting projects that we are doing to mitigate CO2 emissions and sequester more CO2. So I think that being big sometimes sounds a little bit scary for some people. But if you're not big enough, you are not able to do things that matter in sustainability at that scale.
Well, I think, the outreach that you can have is so much better, and there's a moral good to come from it from a variety of people by you being able to scale at large. And but one thing I really want to outline to people that might be new to coffee listening to this is that we've just been to some farms in Bandung not far away the other day, and most of the farmers have to literally climb up mountains and hand pick the cherries. And a lot of what you can do is literally drive
the machines
that cover the trees sort of thing and shake the trees and get the cherries off. And so like it's really commercial farming. And I don't want anyone to take negative connotations on that, but the scale at which Brazilian farmers can operate is much different to some of the smallholder farmers in many different countries. And so, which really fascinates me, and it kind of speaks to how Brazil supplies the world its coffee. Another question that just popped into my mind is that obviously there was a hugely reduced harvest in Brazil last year. Did that affect you as well? Was the harvest at Daterra reduced?
So what is happening right now is climate change is really affecting coffee farms all over the globe. The problems are slightly different. So if you go to Central America, lots of places are having outrageous amounts of water. They're just washing out the plantations. Also here in Asia, they're having lots of rain that is making very difficult for them to process the coffee to reach the same levels of quality. In Brazil, on the other hand, droughts, high temperatures. Like we have been having record-breaking temperatures over the last 4 years in Brazil, and the longest drought periods that we have ever had in coffee history in Brazil since the temperatures started and the rain cycles started to be measured. So when it happens once, it's okay. Twice, 3 years, 4 years, you start getting to a point that the trees are exhausted.
Right.
And most farmers in Brazil, they don't have irrigation installed at the farms. We do have irrigation in most of our farms. 70% of the farm is irrigated, but still temperatures are high.
Yes.
Still, you need it to rain so you have water for irrigation as well. So even though we have been less impacted than others, we were impacted. We can see that our production is going to be smaller this year. So we should have 20% less production than last year because of that situation. So it is impacting us as well. So what we're trying to do is doing lots of climate mitigation projects in order to reduce the temperature around the farm, planting more trees and restoring the native vegetation areas, doing projects for water farming, which is trying to produce water by...
How do you do that?
How do you do that? Planting forests is the main thing.
Okay.
Restoring vegetation around river courses, riverbeds, around the preservation areas of the farm so it can bring more water springs up. It's proven also that if you have more vegetation, you are more likely to attract rainwater than if you don't have it. That's why it doesn't rain in desert, for example.
Okay.
So there are lots of things that you can do, but all those things, they take decades, many, many years, but we have to start doing them now. So we were doing those things, but still it's challenging because the problems we are facing right now, they are new and they are coming to an extent that is becoming very difficult to navigate around them. We are being able to do that still, but it's becoming harder.
So I want to narrow down on that key part you said about water. So
Yeah.
like water, what's the role that water plays in a coffee plant maturing and be able to grow more cherries?
It's everything. Like from tree development, you need lots of water when the trees are small, especially because they're very fragile. But then when they're big, they're trees. They need water. It's living beings, right? But there are specific moments of the year that you need more water than others. So pretty much you need water in the blossoming season. So when the flowers, they are ready to blossom, when the water comes, when the rain comes, the tree understands, okay, now I have water. I have enough resources to make those little flowers to become cherries. So they blossom. That's the first rains of the rainy season. That's what blossoms, makes the tree blossom. But just after that, the tree needs to have a steady supply of water. Otherwise, as a very intelligent organism, the tree thinks, okay, I don't have enough resources, so maybe all those flowers, they are too much. So they start aborting some of the flowers and they don't turn into fruit afterwards.
Right.
If they turn into fruit, that fruit is still hollow, it has nothing inside. But as it starts growing and the beans start growing inside, they demand a lot from the tree and lots of water is required to fill those beans so they can become like big and nice and, like beans that are going to become coffee later. So those are the most critical moments that you need water: blossoming, fruit development, and bean filling. But then after that, when the maturation starts, usually you want water to decrease or cease completely. Because when the cherries are ripe, if you have lots of rain coming, the cherries are very soft and they just fall to the ground.
Right.
And you have lower quality. You lose production. It's hard because you cannot dry the coffee. So all the farming operations for harvesting, you would prefer to do them in a drier weather. But then when blossoming comes again, please, water.
Well, it's interesting because I've been to Brazil when the opposite of what's going on now happened. So I think back in 2017, 18,
Yeah.
there was a huge increase in the overall yield. So in the harvest year on year, it was like you went from one year to the next producing 30 to 40% more beans for the entire country because rain fell at the right time. It was just booming.
Yeah.
And the opposite of what's happening now happened then. So the price kind of collapsed and there was such an oversupply of coffee that farmers couldn't sell it for a reasonable price.
Yeah.
And so it's I think it's fascinating for people to know listening to this podcast that it works in different ways, and you have to
Yeah.
manage so many different circumstances
Yeah.
as coffee producers. So
Yeah, and right now we're having record-breaking prices because this situation is really unforeseen to this level, the way it's happening right now. And looking forward, it's hard to believe that climate's gonna get better. It's hard to believe that prices are gonna go lower again in the near future because the climatic situation is really a crisis right now. So coffee farmers, they have to be working a lot in order to mitigate climate change. But more than that, the whole coffee industry has to care about that and try to help the different parts of the supply chain to be able to navigate around those challenges.
it's interesting you say that because I just listened to, I watched a Brewers Cup performance from a gentleman called Carlos Escobar this morning.
Yeah.
So he used Colombian coffee, and he told a story about how he's the son of a coffee farmer, but his family got out of the coffee business because there's just no incentive. There wasn't any incentive for them to do it anymore.
Yeah.
And, it painted quite a bleak picture because even though people might see that coffee prices are high right now and they might think, oh, the farmers are incentivized to get into it, there's a variety of reasons why farmers might stop growing coffee, like you just outlined. And so we need to ensure the viability of it. And this is one sort of thing that I try and fly the flag of in Australia, and is that it's for one thing for us to convince coffee roasters and things like that to buy more expensive coffee and pay better and more ethical prices. But
That's
I think
true.
convincing the consumer on the end, and I think if they actually knew and understood the dynamics of coffee growing, they would happily pay a higher price. And I'm not talking about paying $12 for a flat white. Just like $1 more could go so much further.
Yeah, we just got used to see coffee as something that is cheap.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's gonna be the reality
Yeah.
going forward. So it's changing. Like the plateaus of prices that we have reached right now, they put coffee in a different, almost in a different level as a product itself. And we are seeing similar movements happening with other products like chocolate and all. But I think that the difference is coffee is something that culturally around the world is vital. Like people need coffee, not as a nutritional necessity, but because we need coffee.
Well, this is part of the explanation for me is that
Yeah.
people have such visceral reactions to coffee prices going up because we love it so much.
Yeah.
If it was like something else, petrol, it's just like annoying. People understand the petrol market,
Yeah.
and petrol's not something that people just like love so much. It's a necessity of life in a different way.
That's true.
But I think coffee has such a ritualistic impact on people's lives that's why it annoys people so much,
Yeah.
because they love it so much. They don't want to do without it. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Makes sense.
One thing that I often think about with Daterra, and I name drop Daterra all the time. I was in Dubai earlier in the year, and one sort of interesting subject that came up was obviously coffee growing in Yemen, but also coffee growing in neighboring Saudi Arabia. And the Saudis are really investing in their coffee industry right now. We had someone on the podcast that explained that the public investment fund over there is investing $1.4 billion in revitalizing Saudi Arabian coffee growth. And immediately what came to mind is you guys should engage Daterra for some consulting, because they're trying to revegetate essentially, really, I guess, tough landscape. It's not all desert in Saudi Arabia, but they're trying to revegetate these lands. Would you ever consider, or have you ever engaged with people in regions like that? And
Not yet, because it's completely new. But at Daterra, we are very much keen into researching, innovating, and doing things in a different way. That's what we have done when we try to challenge the traditional Brazilian coffee production into produce coffee that would be on world stages. And it has happened. It has worked. So I do think that nowadays we have more knowledge than ever. We have more resources. We have more science behind coffee that could back up that kind of project. What we have done in our experience, because I think that if I could share with these people from Saudi Arabia and these regions, what I think is important is science. Investing in science is fundamental. So for us, when we had this idea of doing specialty coffee, sustainable coffee, we had no idea on how to do that and how to get there, just a dream and a vision. So instead of just learning from grandfathers in coffee and other farmers in coffee, we went after universities in Brazil, internationally, science, genetics, research institutions, and we brought all these people into Daterra from the very beginning. And we literally gave them plots of the farm for them to research different things with us, from genetics research, farming techniques, soil nutritional approaches, post-harvesting processes, different drying techniques. And then this whole thing took maybe almost 2 decades from the moment that we actually took the farm to a quality that we were like, okay, now we are doing what we were dreaming from the very beginning. So it takes time. I think it's faster nowadays.
Well, I love that. And I love that idea of doing hard work now to make someone else's job in the future easier, or just build something bigger and better.
Yeah.
So I love that idea. I really want to know, what's like one example of something just wild to do with science that you've applied to your farm? Like, what's one example that you could give us that's like, that'll blow people's mind?
Well, there are a few things, but like one thing that I think is really, people always get their jaws dropped when we talk about it, like Lorena, the varietal that made the Daterra famous around the globe, which is the varietal that Emi Fukuhori has used in 2018 from the Daterra and won the World Brewers Cup Championship. We have lost 200 hectares of Lorena over 14 years trying to adapt it to our microclimate. So you listen, oh, Lorena, World Brewers Cup champion, and no, you were like, okay, oh, wow, amazing, let's start planting Lorena. It actually took 14 years and 200 hectares of that genetic, like selecting generation after next generation, so that it would kind of absorb out the conditions of our ecosystem, so that nowadays we do Lorena, we produce Lorena in many areas of the farm. It's still not very big, but it takes time, it takes effort, it takes resources. So, and we had lots of institutions helping us with that. We had the Agronomic Institute of Campinas helping us with that. We had the Ely Research Center helping with that.
Ely is in the big international brand.
Big Italian brand. Yeah. They have done lots of genetics research in Brazil, and they still do it nowadays. So it's not that easy, and it takes a little bit of stubbornness on top of everything, you know, like having the vision and going after that.
I think, but even before this conversation, if you had mentioned science, coffee farming, technology, first farm that would come to my mind is Daterra, right? How do you see, have you embraced any like artificial intelligence at all yet with your coffee farm, and how do you see that impacting coffee farming in general? Because I've been doing a little bit of reading about this in the last few days, and the way it could help coffee farmers is pretty substantial.
Yeah, I think yes, especially building models for weather forecasting, and if we could have technologies that will give you inputs on what we should be doing next based on what artificial intelligence could show you as trends on the coffee farming level.
So what does that mean in practice? So like, say for example, you're using artificial intelligence to sort of forecast weather better.
Exactly.
Does that mean you're like, all right, well, we turn on the irrigation on this certain day, we'll let the rain do its thing on the next day? Is that?
You could do that, or even if you have forecasts for specific regions, maybe governments could work together with farmers more proactively, trying to do things before the issues that we're gonna have happen. Also, on other sides, on other fields, I think that understanding different plagues and diseases and how they are developing at the field level, because you're gonna have so many inputs and data, the artificial intelligence can forecast what kind of plagues and diseases could be harmful for that specific area, so you can start treating that earlier, so that you use less chemicals, you use less defensives, because we already know it's getting to a moment that's going to become a problem. So there are lots of applications in soil microbiology as well. Understand what kind of soil microbiological activities you have in your field. Is it ideal? How can you improve that so that you can use less chemicals as well? So there are lots of different things that we can have artificial intelligence helping us. But I think it's still very much in the conceptual world for agriculture and farming, and especially for coffee, because there are other crops around the globe that they are bigger. So they usually get investments on that kind of technology much earlier, like sugarcane, soybeans, cotton, orange. Coffee is important, but if you compare it to those crops, it's much smaller. So it's gonna get there, but maybe it's not gonna be the first product to try those solutions out.
Well, even when I was doing a bit of research before we started, I think I read nearly 30%, one third of Brazilian coffee or Brazilian GDP, pardon me, is agriculture.
Yeah.
And I think of that makeup, 5% of it is coffee.
Is coffee.
Something
Only.
like that. So like you're growing soybeans, livestock.
And we are the biggest coffee producer in the world.
Yeah.
So you would automatically think coffee is that important to us. It is important, but the statistics are perfect. It's only 5% of all the agricultural products.
Yeah, and that kind of astounds me, because obviously I come from Australia, and most of the country can't actually be farmed because of the like a lot of it is outback
It's
desert.
very similar to Brazil in so many ways.
Yeah. So but you utilize the land so much, and regional Brazil is absolutely beautiful. I would encourage anyone listening to this, if you can travel to the regions of Brazil.
Yeah.
It's almost like two countries when you go from a city like Sao Paulo to like
And the countryside.
Poços de Caldas or something.
Yeah.
It's like
Yeah.
it's like two different atmospheres.
Yeah. And you didn't even scratch the surface. It's like Australia is so big that it's very diverse culturally as well. If you go up north, if you go to the down south we have lots of German influence. And then it's a completely different even way of thinking. People are much different from people from the north of Brazil and the countryside as well. It's a very diverse country because it's a continental scale country.
Let's talk about fermentation.
Yep.
So fermentation, I think, is probably where you've built a bit of a name for yourself.
Yeah.
Daterra. The masterpieces, they truly are masterpieces. So when I've cupped them previously, there was a cupping that I remember at Belo Horizonte at that World of Brewers Cup that we've spoken about already. That just kind of blew me away. And I think for people to really appreciate or understand that some of the world's best coffees come from Brazil, you need to go there, because a lot of the best ones I've never even seen in my country. With fermentation, obviously you're not dealing with, like we mentioned before, 2,000 meters above sea level altitudes and shade covered coffee. You get there with fermentation is my belief.
Yeah.
Like, explain to us how you go about that sometimes.
Yeah. So same thing as the Lorena that I was just mentioning. Fermentation was also a very long trial and error history for us. We started experimenting with fermentation for the first time in 2011, 12, trying to wash coffees, because in the 2010s, that's when people were crazy about washed coffee, very acidic but clean coffees, and that was completely the opposite of Brazil. And then that's the moment in our history that even though we were already very well known, people started losing interest a little bit, like, oh yeah, Daterra does great coffee, it's all very consistent, we can trust it, but it doesn't have this acidity. So we started looking at fermentation as a way to, how can we challenge our land to produce acidity? We tried it for many years. We failed miserably many times. And then after trying for a few years, in 2014, for the first time, we had a partnership with a French roaster, Café Lomi.
Oh, the best one.
Yeah. And then we have a research project on top of all the other ones that we partnered up with a few roasters that are studying and taking science very seriously from around the globe. And then they came to us and they said, hey, there is this region in France called Beaujolais. So Beaujolais was always regarded as a wine region in France that was for table wines, not very complex, cheap wines even. But recently they started a process called carbonic maceration, which is like this: you put the whole grapes in the tanks, and then after fermenting up until like 5%, you press the grapes, and they're having these crazy tropical flavor notes. And their wines are winning competitions, winning auctions and all. And then he said, why don't we try that with coffee? Because it sounds like Brazil to me. And I said, well, you know what? It sounds like we're going to destroy the coffee, but why not? Let's try it. So in our spirit of experimenting and researching, it just made sense. We tried that with a bourbon coffee. That was the area that we have assigned for that research with them. And then I tasted that coffee and I was blown away because I never tasted that flavor up until that moment. Those flavors didn't exist in Brazil. They didn't exist in coffee up until that moment. That's the very beginning of anaerobic fermentations, okay? We're not copying anyone. We're just like benchmarking with wine, and accidentally, because I don't think it's accident, because it was a construction that happened over many years, failing up until we got to that point. And then we had the chance to try it out again with a Lorena, which is already a high-scoring varietal. And it was the best coffee of my life up until that moment. And it's still today because I have a connection to that coffee still. And yeah, that led us to more auctions, to more competition coffees. We have improved the techniques to do those fermentations aerobically, anaerobically, with yeast, without yeast, with cold temperature, with hotter temperature. So now we have recipes and we are able to reach very different results, but consistently. There it was experimentation. Nowadays, it's a protocol, pretty much.
It was interesting with Emi Fukuhori's coffee, the Lorena, because with the Lorena, it's genetically much lower in caffeine content, so compared to other varieties of coffee. So it's almost no caffeine.
Yeah.
And caffeine in a coffee, it actually gives the coffee its bitterness. So you've got almost no bitterness in this coffee. So when I think I recall when I had that coffee, it tasted like purple grapes and just it was so flavorsome and abundant. I couldn't believe it.
Yeah. And I think that there are other things coming up because right now at the farm we have genetics research fields, and we have almost 200 different genetics growing at the farm under experimentation. Just a few trees of each, 10 here, 5 there, 8 here. And then there are materials from different parts of the world. There are crazy hybrids of Lorena and Aramosa and Geisha, or other hybrids that are meant for climate resilience as well, because that's an important topic. If you can develop genetics that are more climate resilient, but tasting amazing, that's something that's going to be important for the future, especially with the issues that we're having. So I think that Lorena right now is still one of our favorite varietals, but I don't know. I think that maybe in a few years' time, we're going to have new things coming up. So keep an eye out.
This must be getting everyone salivating and feeling like they need to brew a coffee at home. And if you are looking to brew a coffee at home, I would encourage you to use Timor products. So we're using Timor here. Hand grinders, electric kettles, electric grinders. I went backstage before. I saw a lot of people using Timor grinders. So it's World Brewers Cup quality.
Yeah.
Heck, maybe even use it with a Daterra Masterpiece. I don't know. Maybe your roaster's using it back home. Wherever you are, wherever you may be. Consider Timor coffee. I want to end talking about some more general nature things with coffee. You UX so much on the farm end in coffee production. What do you want to see more of in cafes as a producer?
I'm also a cafe owner myself.
Okay.
So I own a cafe in Brazil, and we are fully dedicated to specialty. What is interesting about our case, because we are in Brazil, and in Brazil we are not allowed to import green coffee.
Really?
So in Brazil, most of the times you only drink Brazilian coffee.
Okay.
Yeah. So what we as cafe owners have to do in Brazil is really playing with different regions of Brazil, different processing methods to have a menu of coffees that is diverse, that is interesting, because otherwise you just have coffee, right? And we can only have Brazil. So it's been interesting because I see that lots of cafes in Brazil, what they try to do to create this diversity. If you go outside, you have a menu like Colombia, Brazil, Ethiopia, Kenya. In Brazil is Brazil, south of Minas, Brazil, Modiana, Brazil, Chapada Diamantina, Brazil, north of Paraná. So we play with different regions of Brazil. So I think that challenges us in a different way to look at one country as a possibility to produce different flavors and profiles because we have them. So I think that this has changed a lot already, but still people attach very much themselves to a desired flavor profile of a certain origin.
Right.
So I want an Ethiopian that tastes like jasmine and mandarin and peach and stone fruits. I want a Brazil that is chocolate, nuts, and almonds. I want a Colombia that is citrus and panela and brown sugar. So they look at the origin and they want to profile the origin. But I think that what is special about coffee is because different from wine, for example, and other industries that are more traditional, there is no rule. We are breaking the rules all the time. We see this competition here. People are just breaking the rules all the time.
Yeah.
They're brewing coffee with colder water. They're doing very long extractions or very short extractions. So things that we learned 5 years ago that they were wrong in coffee, we're just challenging those concepts all the time. So why putting a label on a coffee origin and requiring that origin should just represent a certain profile? So that's
I
that's
100% agree.
my
And-
appeal.
And people and producers are coming up with more and more ways to ferment coffee, to grow it, experiment with it in all different ways. And I think this is something that the pace of change in coffee is happening so fast now. Like even, especially at Origin, like the amount of different like styles of coffee processing that are available
Yeah.
now. Just when I first started, they didn't exist.
Yeah, exactly.
And then the amount of technology that's happening in bars. But I'm really excited for, I think innovation is probably a big theme in coffee
Yeah.
in the next 5 years. So I was saying this the other day. There's never really been a more exciting time to be in coffee, despite there being so many challenges. I think a lot of people are down in the dumps right now because for a variety of reasons, and fair enough. But stay positive because there's so many good things to happen in coffee that we
Absolutely.
won't even discover in our lifetime. So
Yeah.
it's important to be positive in that way. One thing I'll ask you before we go, I'm a big time fight fan, right? Love my UFC. So UFC, Brazil produces some of the best fighters in the world. Are you an Alex Pereira guy? Do you follow it at all?
I don't follow it very much.
man,
I'm sorry.
Come on. You've got some of the best fighters ever. So
Yeah, that's
Alex
true.
Pereira.
That's true.
Alexandre Pantoja.
I just think I'm too much of a coffee nerd
Yeah.
to just get into another wormhole, which is UFC or, I'm just like,
Football? Are you into football?
not as well. I'm such
really?
a not a Brazilian in that point.
So
Yeah.
what do you do in your spare time when you have it?
Well, spare time, I love going out with my friends, having drinks, just chatting. And I was telling the other day to someone like, oh, what do you do on holidays? I just want to stay home because I travel so much all the time that when I'm on holidays, I want to take care of things in my house and make sure that I get my life organized before it gets crazy again.
Yes, yep.
So yeah, I'm a very social person. So most of the times I never watch TV, and that's for fights and UFC and football and anything. I just want to be around the people that I like
Yep.
and that I love, and that's my friends, that's my family. So when I'm home, that's what I do. I'm with the people that I love.
You mentioned you travel a lot. What are like your top 3 coffee cities in the world?
top
Not including
three
Jakarta.
coffees.
Yeah, coffee cities.
Of cities.
Yeah, cities for coffee, I guess you'd say. And we won't include Jakarta because we're here right now, so we don't want to bias it.
Yeah, sure. Japan for me is amazing because people love coffee a lot there, and of course we have commercial coffee and the more everyday consumption culture, which is like the cans,
Yep.
dark roast. But then you have these beautiful omakase style coffee shops. They're just challenging the way coffee is consumed. I have lots of friends doing a beautiful job there, and I love it very much. So I would say Japan is my favorite, first of all. Second one, I don't know. It's difficult. That's so difficult. I've been to Ireland
Ireland?
recently, and I had some very good coffee experiences there. UK in general, I think there is a good quality of coffee there.
Yep.
And last,
One more.
drum roll. Difficult, because I have favorite spots almost everywhere that I've been to. I don't know. I think the Nordic countries are still quite impressive in that sense.
Sweden, Copenhagen,
Yeah.
Norway.
So we had a few shows happening in those countries that I really enjoyed. So I wouldn't put just one country, but the Nordics is still a good place for coffee.
They do filter coffee really well.
Yeah.
What's one thing we've spoken about? What's one thing we have not spoken about that you would like the listener to be aware of?
The listener should be aware of. Well, Brazil does great coffee. You
course.
said that a lot already. So that's something that we should be reinforcing all the time, because coffee challenges us. I don't know. I think you covered a lot, and I just appreciate everything that you brought and how much you appreciate our work. Having these spaces for me is something that is very special, because if you think about it, when I started in coffee 15 years ago, maybe I would not receive this kind of space as a Brazilian producer, but we have challenged that. So if you can see that, you are communicating to a bigger audience that also needs to know those things. And I just appreciate very much the opportunity. Thank you so much.
No, thank you. And I look forward to one day visiting the farm. I think I'm going to make
Anytime,
it.
man.
I think I'm going to make it my
Anytime.
goal. I want to do a podcast there. So we got to set up in like the middle of a field or something.
Yes,
Do a
let's
podcast
do
in the
it.
middle of
Let's
it
do
and document some of the
We're
trip.
starting harvest like in 3 days. When do
Okay.
you want to book your tickets for?
I don't know if I can make it this year. I've got we've got some trips coming up for the end of the year. So, but mark my words, I will be there. So
Let's do it.
And we'll be serving more of the coffee at the cafe
Yeah.
as well.
Awesome.
So thanks to everyone for listening. Thanks to Time More for supporting us. So if you need some brew gear, timemore.com or one of your local suppliers in the country you're at. Gabriel,
Thank you very much.
obrigado. Thank you so much.
Obrigado.
Put it there, Governor.
Cheers. Thank you.